Hello, everyone. Welcome to Proc-N-Roll, your guide to practical procurement, where we make procurement rock and roll. As always, I've got Natasha, our pro CPO, Conrad, our innovator, and you've got myself, Zach, your expert on procurement. We join you with almost 70 years of practical procurement experience, and we discuss the latest and greatest trends and topics in procurement. And today's discussion is a very topical and interesting one. It's all about procurement in 2025. So what's coming up in the year ahead? What should the procurement teams be looking out for in the year ahead? I think it should be a good discussion. I'm going to ask Natasha, you and Conrad both for your kind of top three predictions for 2025. What should procurement teams be thinking about in 2025? What do you think they'll be facing? Natasha, do you want to kick us off? What are your top three sort of predictions?
Top three. Where is my crystal ball? Got it. This is my high technology tool. Oh, speaking of technology, all right. So I think that my top three. I think the first one will be going back to basics. And I'm sure that a lot of listeners would say, boo, we are stepping in the era when everything can predict everything, right? So, and technology has answer to everything. It's just finally we developed that silver bullet that will solve all our problems. I'm a procurement practitioner. I'm not an analyst. I'm not a researcher. I am not developing procurement theories. I'm working in this field day in, day out. And what I'm observing, especially after I stepped out from corporate world and started interacting with a lot of prospects and clients, what I learned is that while we're chasing very, very advanced technologies that can solve super difficult problems and create something that human mind didn't even go in that direction 10, 15 years ago, at the same time, from procurement perspective, a lot of companies still remain with very low maturity, and many companies still operate kind of like at the abacus level, right? So I think one is that we will get the basics right in 2025. Many companies will focus on operating model, operational structure, how to connect procurement priorities to companies' business objectives, how to train people to be smart, proactive category thinkers versus RFP executors, how to build pipeline of projects that will generate value to the company, and marry it closer to business objectives. So getting the basics right is the first one. Technology. Can't not talk about technology and technological advancements, but mainly how do you marry the maturity of technology with maturity of procurement organizations? Because the latter is far ahead than the former. Technology is far ahead than the readiness of our procurement organizations and teams and companies overall to adopt it. So that would be the second one. And I think we're going to start slowly walking away from the word savings and focusing more on the word value. And whether the value is in reducing the risk of operating, streamlining supplier base, whether it's focusing more on spend under management, or any other aspects that represent value for that particular company, I think that would be the focus for many. So for my top three is get the basics right, marry maturity of technology with maturity of your team, and start the journey of migrating from savings to value.
Nice. I think those are really excellent, Natasha. I think there's a lot of probably shared trends that are driving all three of those things. I mean, Conrad, did you have a similar list? What's on your top three?
So actually, I'll put a vote in with technology as well. I think and for the reason of, I think the executives are funding AI and other technology automation. I think there's just this huge wave of enthusiasm around automation that AI has put on the table. And so there's budgets there and there's expectations. Like I often have looked at why are our stakeholders thinking that procurement should be so easy? And I think it's because they go home and they buy everything in Amazon. Like the Amazon process is just easy. And so that's how they translate it to us. And I think in a similar way, all of this automation that's happening, with AI and that they're seeing, they're just assuming that procurement can do the same thing for them. So I think technology is going to be a huge wave that continues to build around us in the year ahead. I think my second item is talent. I've been seeing a real change in talent availability and so resources available. And also, honestly, I don't know, in the last couple of quarters, it seems like there's more people actually looking for a job. So this might sound a little counterintuitive, but I just think putting the right people in our procurement teams right now is going to be an increasing problem. I think we, the leaders of procurement and the participants in procurement that are, leaving the workforce over the next couple of years and, all the challenges and issues that we're seeing, global labor concerns. Like I think talent is going to continue to be a really big challenge for the leader, for the leaders and the teams. And then the third one I would say is just risk generally. COVID sort of put this giant risk flag on top of everything procurement supply chain. And that has brought awareness, but the global governments that are implementing regulations to just like the list of what they're saying we have to do just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I don't think we can get away from that. My belief is that I don't know that the flag will be planted this year, but we continue to move in a place where the CPO is the risk, supplier risk manager as well. Like they are the officer in charge of supplier risk. And that's sort of more formalized. I think it's already happened in an informal way, but so CPO continues to transition to CPO plus the chief supplier risk officer.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of themes that I think we're on the same page about. Technology obviously being a really big one. But then as well, I think to Natasha's point around going back to the basics, I'd completely agree with that, Natasha. Like looking across the board, a lot of organizations are trying to just go back to basics, but I think it's muddied a little bit the picture by the fact that there's so much change. I think there's a fundamental shift going on in procurement. Again, your second point, which is procurement's shifting from cost to value. And one of those, the biggest things there, Conrad, would be, for example, risk, right? And managing supplier risk. So I think that's what a lot of companies might be juggling in 2025. One is there's a
What are your three, Zach? Do you have a list of three?
Yeah, I would. Mine are quite aligned with Natasha's. So I think the changing fundamentals of procurement, right? So it is about procurement reorienting itself, trying to get the basics right, because a lot of organizations have been trying to do that for a long time, but also addressing all of the big changes that are coming procurement's way in terms of what the expectations are on procurement. I think the cost to value points that Natasha mentioned is with the savings to value, the shift in focus is really key driver of that. In that, and technology, in that, for example, the greater focus on customer service, right, and what's being termed orchestration, right? So that's a big technology trend, but that's emerging from, procurement being asked to do more. So definitely getting the basics right and changing fundamentals. Definitely this movement from savings to value. So we're going from savings to value. We're going from, the way I see it, from category to enterprise. Right, so it's no longer about procurement's world. You're in the business. You're part of a business now, and you need to deliver across the whole enterprise. And I really welcome that kind of change in mindset. I think that's going to make a huge difference for procurement.
So, Zach, your perspective is very important and very interesting because working for KPMG, you're working for a very mature company. All right, so I'm just building my advisory firm. You're working for a very established one, and you see a lot of different clients, and you see clients of different maturity from procurement perspective. Do you see these tendencies across a lot of clients, few clients? Is it something that many people can apply to themselves, or is far and few in between?
In terms of the basics,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it does apply to most organizations. Again, I think if you look at, for example, the last few years, a ton of companies have made investments into digitizing their procurement. They finally got the budgets, they got the green lights from the CFOs and the COOs, and they've invested in huge technologies, often platforms that are end to end to deal with their contracts and their purchase to pay, etc. I think to both of your points around maturity, I think now the tech stacks are getting more mature within procurement. People are looking at the tech saying, okay, this hasn't solved all my problems, right? So I need to go back and look at my technology, see where I can enhance it, right? Or how I mature that even further, how I need to mature my processes and the rest of my operating model to maximize the value from the tech stack. So in that sense, Natasha, yes, it's a very common sort of place that a lot of procurement functions I've spoken to are at, in that they're all trying to deal with a lot of the basics, trying to reestablish procurement functions, have a lot more influence and be a lot more aligned with the organization's strategy, while also not wanting to be left behind on the digital change. Actually, I think procurement is doing really well on the tech side of things. I think the last few years, and now it's looking forward into AI and experimentation, innovation. So yeah, that's my prediction.
You know, I love this word maturity, but I'm wondering how much of the way we look at the way things are happening is because we're maturing individually as procurement experts, professionals, and leaders, and we're in organizations of different maturity levels. Like where we're working, Natasha, whether, you know, I'm not like Salesforce or Nike, these are very sort of mature organizations. But there's this treadmill of organizations. They start simple and basic and they have no maturity whatsoever. They don't even have a procurement team. And then they grow and they either die or they become bigger and they mature a little bit more. And then at the end of that treadmill is like a wood chipper. And most companies are acquired by somebody else, or they're, you know, like even I saw in the news, I used to work at Intel, right? And I saw that with all of the upheaval in the Intel world, they've lost their CEO. There's talk about, you know, fragmenting the company. So you take a company that's really organized in a function, and then you like break this piece off and put it somewhere else. And now they don't have a mature procurement organization to run things in there. So you just have this constant like flux of maturity, and it changes things. And so I don't think the need to mature ever goes away. I hope we get smarter individually. But I think I would say the three of us are transformation experts. I mean, we've talked about this before, and this is like raw meat for us. Like this is job security. This is something to keep us interesting and excited for the rest of our lives. Because if you just said like procurement's just going to grow to this place where everybody's mature and then like we're living in nirvana, procurement nirvana together, like that would just be weird to me. Like that'll just never happen.
Well, do you agree with? Go on, Natasha.
Yeah, because the leaders also change, right? And the average tenure of CPO is between 3 to 4 years. And so as the leaders change, they bring different flavor. Also, organizations change. Also depends on how organizations grow, right? If the organizations grow 20% year over year and procurement never gets enough budget to sustain that growth, then you always need to kind of like procurement is always catching up, right? I think in one of our episodes, we've discussed that procurement very often is one of the last functions to establish in organizations, because companies do not start paying attention to the bottom line until they reach 200-300 million in expenses. Until then, everything just happens for business to grow, and focus predominantly is on the top line. So I think at the end of the day, you're right, the procurement maturity is it's a treadmill that you kind of like keep running on, hopefully also delivering some positive results from kind of like hitting some milestones. But I think because the function most of the time is not the top of mind for the organizations, it always catches up with everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, I love your
that I hope to.
I love your comment about the basics, honestly, because no matter which of those maturity levels you're in, like actually being like focused on doing your job and doing it well. That's one of my, that's one of Aaron, he works on my team. It's his mantra, like do your job and do it well. But how many people actually do that day in and day out? And so, like, hey, figure it out and make it work. Like do it well. Yeah.
Well, I guess to that point then, do we expect a lot of procurement teams to be making investments into 2025? Is that your anticipation, your expectation? Lots more transformation than this year?
I think so. Yeah, I certainly hope so. Otherwise, the gap between the company's growth and the procurement's ability to support the companies in a smart, proactive, and very effective way will go down. Because in order to generate effectiveness and efficiency, you need that fuel to growth. And that fuel often comes from procurement or some procurement activities. You need to eliminate operational and tactical transactions. You need to eliminate repetitive and redundant functions, or kind of like streamline them in a right way. You have to streamline your supplier base and drive up more effective things that way. It will require investment. I don't know how procurement can do all of that and serve their company as well if they don't have that. And if company is not on the path of growth, then even more so procurement will need to invest to elevate the company to the level of being able to compete.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, maybe we go back. I think, Conrad, one of yours was talent and skills in 2025, right? I think you made the point that you see a lot of shifts there in terms of the procurement demographic or skill sets. Can you walk us through kind of your thinking? What is it that you see?
Maybe a year ago, people would be like, "Hey, I'm leaving this company. I'd like to find another job." And my sense was, "Oh, well, they'll be able to find another procurement job in a few weeks." Like it just seemed like super frothy and hot. Like everyone's a bit, there's more people hiring than people available. It feels like it's turned a little bit right now. We're in this really weird place, I think, where organizations aren't quite sure. I don't know, the level of investment. Maybe there's some constraints on headcount. All the political uncertainty that's out there, but I think that trend that was there, say 12 or 18 months ago is really the trend line, which is there are not enough people doing really great work in procurement, and it's needed. Like the organization is going to recognize you continue to recognize just how important it is. So I think it's there. Like I said, the baby boomers are going to be retiring, and there's lots of factors that are going to drive it. I don't have any great metrics right now to say, hey, this is really hardcore data. I've believed for 30 years now that the economies of the future are going to be economies that have workers. Like you can't grow your economy without workers. And we can talk about AI and all the other things that might supplant that. And I think that that's a true, like that's going to happen as well. But all of I live in a country right now that is kind of anti-immigration, or we haven't figured out how to do it and do it well. The U.S. isn't the only country that's struggling with that right now. We all want to grow and we want to have all these monies and, all the benefit of that. But, there are some really strong problems with our closed-mindedness in terms of where do we find talent? How do we use talent?
Right.
Anyway.
So the skill demands are changing. Is that what you're saying? So the demand is now for a different type of skill set that maybe the market isn't supplying enough of?
Well, for sure, there's a supply and demand problem. Like, I don't think that's like those two are really important factors. And I think there's big shifts in supply and demand. But there's also, I think that, at Graphite, we use, we've grown and we have global teams. And, all of the remote work that we're doing, like that's changing it as well. I mean, you can kind of we're having this virtual chat. I'm in Hawaii. You're in London. Natasha's in California. I don't know if you're still at the ski resort, Natasha, or if you made it back home, but like we can do real work from all over the world. So, that changes it as well. But that's why I say talent is one of my top 3, because I see big need, supply and demand shifting, and the issues and challenges around talent. These are really real problems. And there's big vectors that are moving with supply and demand, and technology is coming into that as well. But I've talked to more and more procurement leaders who are struggling to find the right person to fill their jobs in all sorts of different cities across the country. And I've talked to a lot of leaders that are shifting between jobs as well. So it's a big deal.
Is that your experience as well, Natasha? I'm interested in understanding as well, what are the procurement skill sets? I think we touched on some of this in some prior episodes, the importance of stakeholder management, the emphasis on EQ. Is this some of the things that is driving these skill shifts?
I think what Conrad just described will actually kind of force, maybe too strong of a word, but I can't find a better word right now, but will put leaders in a position when they have to grow talents from within. It's kind of like, stop looking for the skills you need, find a way to grow those skills. And I know it's harder because some skills just take time. It's just not even a particular skill, it's experience of you facing 5 of these situations before, right? Or leading this creative thinking or designing something that you hadn't designed before. It can be a challenge, but think about it from this perspective, right? A lot of things that we had to do in the past as procurement people were pure purchasing function. And a lot of those purchasing activities, as activating purchase orders, reconciling with invoices, ordering the parts, manually reviewing the inventory level, issuing RFPs for any threshold that is out there, regardless of any threshold. Those activities predominantly are automated. And they have either been replaced in organizations with some sort of tools and processes, or will be replaced soon. But people are still there. So as you're replacing their activities, and just as we're bringing AI, more advanced technology, into our workplace, we think that our people, as soon as we replace their activities with technologies, they will instantly become category leads. They will instantly become strategic thinkers. They will be thought partners to their stakeholders. They will be one version of truth across all industry questions. That's not going to happen overnight. You have to prep people for that. You have to give them skills. You have to give them time. You have to give them exposure to the projects and to the initiatives and to the conversations and to the dilemmas that they haven't thought about yesterday. So looking for the skill set from the industry is becoming that we're chasing the same talents. We're cannibalizing procurement talent market. While what maybe we have to put more efforts into is building talent from within and looking at how the sourcing activities with time will get eliminated. They will all be done automatically. Whether it's autonomous contract development, autonomous negotiation, short sliver of very strategic things like ocean freight, media buy. Those things will stay, probably will require human touch. But even in ocean freight, a lot of it is done automatically today, right? So the strategy will belong to people. So we have to build that strategic muscle with our workforce, which in the past, often procurement and purchasing activities did not require.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be so amazing if you could download all of your experience into one of your people? Like you're saying, like you're going to develop them, and we kind of get stuck in this, hey, here's the development plan. I agree with what you're saying, but my brain immediately goes to if I can document all that experience and plop it into AI, can an AI, like an AI assistant, make me or somebody else smarter, faster, more wise with all that experience? It's gonna be really interesting to see where all of this goes. But I agree with you. There's no real replacement for time and experience. The hard wins and the hard losses that really refine somebody into the leader of the future.
Yeah. I see AI as a crutch, a very needed and very important crutch to keep procurement moving. If you don't have thinking procurement professionals, you won't even know how to use it properly. Because I was reviewing the other tool, one of the tools the other day. It's very sophisticated, very smart, and very complex approach to category management. And then I was thinking that you give that much functionality to people who experience that much of the category management, category leadership in the past, they simply will not know what to do with the tool. You still have this educational gap that you have to put people through to bring them closer to be a good utilizer. Is there such a word? Well, there is now. To really fully utilize what that AI solution has to offer them. Because if I am looking at tons of graphs and analysis and just different visuals, and it's not clicking in my brain because I never before put category strategy for travel and expense for the company, then I simply will not know how to interpret it.
How does, I mean, that makes perfect sense, Natasha. I guess the question is, if some CPOs or some procurement leaders want to tackle the AI question head on in 2025, right? What we've seen, I think, is over the last year and a half, people using AI personally and on a day-to-day basis to help out with some work tasks, right? So they'll use it for research or maybe putting something together very, very easy. So there is some testing of AI now. And I guess the question is, how do organizations make this more of a reality, of a real push into AI over the coming year? And I guess for procurement leaders, the question is, well, how do I do that in my team? Should procurement leaders be looking to experiment more with AI, and how do they do that with their teams? Do they need to designate a AI champion within their team, or how do you actually get ahead of this AI conundrum?
What do you see? What do you see across different companies? What can you formulate as a best practice?
I see a lot of conversations, Natasha, as I think we've seen this year, a lot of interest in the AI space. Some examples of companies trialing certain tools that are out there, for example, autonomous negotiations, and some people are starting to experiment with AI. But I think the vast majority haven't really looked at it from sort of for the whole end-to-end function. They're sort of experimenting with certain use cases, certain points. But I do think there will be that shift very soon to say, okay, where you can be using AI in that whole process, where it's very optimal, you need to be using it because it saves time, it saves cost, it makes things more efficient, it automates things, etc. And there are new use cases coming out every day. So you need to have one eye on the market, so that if there is anything new, you can then leverage that very quickly. So that's sort of what I see. I do think from a skills point of view and from a talent point of view, I would say, Conrad, that procurement leaders need to challenge, like I'm saying, challenge their own teams, to sort of evolve a little bit in the function. Be more proactive. Go out there and shape the role of procurement in the business, right? Make sure they feel empowered. Make sure they're not talking about transactional processes, as Natasha was alluding to, but actually going out there and building relationships and working together as a team. And I think there are some ways of working that need to change as well. So I'll give you an example. If you look at sourcing, I think for the last couple of years now, several years actually, I think a lot of organizations have starting to realize that the old RFP process just doesn't work for today's modern, digital ecosystem that we're in. So, we've had a lot of discussion around agile sourcing and some concepts like that. I think there needs to be more of that, right? There needs to be more of trying new things, organizing your team around new processes, new ways of working that really prioritize the customer as well as the supplier and don't prioritize procurement or, some of these more process metrics that procurement organizations usually look at. So I see like there needs to be an evolution of procurement, and your team's a huge part of that. And you need to paint that strategy for them, make sure they go with you on that journey. I think that would be good.
So back to our predictions for the year ahead. I think what I'm hearing from all of you is, I don't know any of us use this word directly, like maturity, but we have to continue, no matter what organization you're in, of what size, we have to lean into maturing and learning and growing our teams, our technologies, our processes. Like that has to happen. And I would say that the emphasis to do that is increasing. I would kind of put a vote behind that for the year ahead. Like if you're not transforming and growing and improving, like you're getting left behind, and you're getting left behind increasingly, faster pace.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Zach, you asked something like, should procurement leaders start kind of like getting their hands dirty, right, in all these tools? I'd say absolutely. And maybe like a little confession. When I was like, for the last 15 years, I was in leadership positions, right? And I kind of like had the privilege of having a large team of people evaluating everything what's out there in the market, evaluating what exists in marketing, what exists in supply chain, what exists in payments, and what exists in technology. So I knew all the players, but the level of my familiarity was very surfacey. Kind of like I knew who is who and maintain cordial professional relationships, but I didn't really know and understood the technology. Then 6 months ago, I started Conrad Procurement, and I'm like, okay, now I need to know all technologies, every technology that exists out there, and what it can deliver, because the spectrum of my clients and the set of problems that they will be facing and dealing with will be very broad and will vary very greatly. So I need to educate myself on everything what exists in the market, right? And the difference between various tools, like what Conrad is doing in Graphite and all other tools that exist in the market, some of them are vastly different. Some of them have common similarities. But the key is to understand how that fits your environment. Not today, but today and 2-3 years from now. Because you can't install new systems every time. You also need to understand as a leader, how will this piece of technology integrate with the entire tech stack that the company has and with other procurement tools. So you can't even evaluate a piece of technology in its own way. You have to understand how it will connect and gel with everything else we have in procurement and with the rest of the company. And that requires much deeper technology knowledge that, like most of my peers, unless they work for technology companies, choose to dive in. And I think now it's becoming more important, because if you think about it, from January, so in 2 years, from January 23, $98 billion been invested in AI. 6 or 7 billion roughly in procurement. So that explains ubiquity of AI. So everyone is talking about it, but it's not a running water yet. You still need to learn it, to understand it, and tailor it. How are you going to adopt different solutions that would feed your business today and as you grow?
So start out with a strategy is what you're suggesting. You need to make sure you've got your at least 3-year strategy, your understanding of your current tech, and then how, Natasha, just to make it practical, how would procurement leaders, keep tabs on how the market evolves over the year? Would you recommend attending different conferences or Would you recommend doing, supplier days, road shows, or should we be networking, sort of find the right use cases and the right players, etc. And Conrad, obviously, you being head of a phenomenal procurement startup, you've also got some good insights there. So
I see all of the above, and I let Conrad to dive into what works the best.
No, we're in a complicated place. I mean, I would say the three of us on any given topic are, years behind understanding of where we should be. Not everything, but I think we tend to get specialized as individuals. We understand a few things really well, but there is so much happening behind the scenes. Like Natasha's kind of talking about the functionality and capability of these companies that are serving the procurement tech stack, both the transactional tech stack and the supplier management tech stack, one-sided networks or, one-to-one networks, and many, like, behind all of that functionality, there's also technology shifting and changing behind them that makes where, the bets where you put your chips on the table with these companies and your own transformation, it makes it more challenging than ever, I think, because it isn't, before, like, let's say 20 years ago, you could kind of pick a P2P system and like, what are you going to risk? Bet on Ariba or bet on Coupa, and like, what's the problem? But it is a problem now. Like, you actually have to understand more about what's happening behind the scenes. What are the best of breed solutions? How would you blend best of breed in with the suites, or what are you going to do? And I think trusting your team is going to make all the right decisions, kind of like Natasha was talking about. I just don't think that's practical anymore. And it requires a lot. But I think, I was sharing with you guys earlier, like, my mind this weekend has been blown playing around with AI. Like, I listened to Spotify, and they published this summary of the year of my listening on this little AI generated podcast. And it sounded like two of my best friends talking to me about my playlist. Like, it was insane how, and they did this for all of their Spotify users. And, as you as a leader really start diving deeper into technologies that you haven't been using and into the art of the possible, like, we need to push our minds to catch up with what's really happening with the world around us, so that we can lead from that position instead of, be caught unaware of what's really possible. And this happens probably in waves. This giant wave hit me this weekend. From an AI perspective, I use AI all the time, by the way. Like, I'm not like, hey, I used AI for the first time this weekend. I just used it in a way that was like, oh my friggin' gosh, this is nuts. Like, I'm going to, and other people are using it every day in medical school to summarize their class notes and everything else. Like I use AI every day, but using it in unique ways and realizing in a creative and innovative way how it's going to change the world around us in the future with, like, compute changes, the Willow chip that Google's working on, the possibility of unlimited compute speed, connectivity, communication, breakthroughs in energy. Like, all of these things are going to happen while we're still alive, guys. And when that stuff all comes together, like, everything's going to be different. So I would just say, kind of, I don't know, and this isn't a criticism, but, like, wake up, like, get out of, we all get kind of where we're at from being really good at where we've been. And I think we got to kind of set that aside and go, you know what? The future is totally different. And it set aside time. I don't think going to the conferences is going to be a big breakthrough, personally. I think, Natasha, you were commenting in the fall, like, everyone's in there saying the same stuff about AI. Like, okay, there's enough, like, superficial talk now. Like, roll up your sleeves, get really dirty in the details, so that, you have these mind-blowing technology experiences at least once a month or once a quarter, but, not once every couple of years.
Yeah. I believe the three things are cornerstone: self-learning, peers, and suppliers. You can even skip white papers and business cases, right? Just talk to your peers, how they use it, like, educate yourself, play with every tool that is out there. And if you're part of any business, then tech companies will gladly give you access to Sandbox or give you a demo, and for as long as you need to. And then talk to suppliers. Oh my God, like, how in procurement we undervalue the wisdom, the experience, the knowledge we can get from the suppliers, from providers of all sort. I'm sure that we'll have an episode we'll record an episode in next year just to talk about that, because that should be a massive shift in procurement mentality on how we view our suppliers. It's not a throat to choke. It's actually a wisdom to treasure.
Absolutely. I think we're making note of that.
What was the TV show where the boss goes like undercover and works actually does real work? I think it was called Undercover Boss, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think as a leader perspective, like go, and you can't really go undercover in most organizations. That's not my point. But like, if you get out of the boardroom and get into the bathroom, and not literally there, like the factory, the trucking, like get down it, like do an RFP. Like, and don't just tell your team to do it, but do it. Like do a like get involved in the work alongside with actually learning some of this technology. And it will, I think again, this is one of those mind-blowing things. Like, seriously, we're still doing it this way? Or I thought we used the automation. We bought this tool. We did. I think you have, like with the speed of change, you can't do it from 3 levels above the work. You have to be in the work in a regular way.
Yeah. There's only so many hours in the day though, right? So you gotta be strategic about how you do that. But I completely agree.
Yeah, but I suspect it's more valuable than hanging out with your boss for another, the 3 hours during the week or something.
Without a doubt. So I think it's actually self-learning, peers, suppliers. I think that's absolutely spot on. I would just add, like, if you're a procurement leader, look at your team. Your team are using AI today, right? Either in their personal lives or in their roles, right? So tap your team for all the ideas that they've got, because everyone's thinking about it, right? And they will know how to apply it to your business. So definitely speak to your team.
This is like, can I just add to that? I had a brilliant example. This is actually where Gen X that I represent and millennials can have actually a work romance that will be absolutely beautiful, because I am behind the millennials on all technological knowledge, and they like, I had black and white TV first time when I was 15 years old, right? So I grew up in a completely different environment. They grew up with the phone and computers on their hands. If you give them a problem that you're trying to solve, from technology, adaptation, learning, data, modeling, metrics, a dashboard perspective, they'll solve it just like that. And it will interest them. It will excite them. Like, it's going to extend the problem, leave them alone. They will, in 2 weeks, they'll find you themselves and they say, okay, let's go to my screen. Let me show you something. That's actually one of the very productive ways of kind of like building the gap and the bridge between kind of like older generation of us, right, and the younger generation that will replace us at some point.
That's genius, right? I think we tend to tell, with our experience, we tend to tell people what to do and how to do it. Like, not all leaders, but I think the natural indication is we know how it generally works. But as you step back a little bit and then see what they do, there's this huge learning that you can get personally. Like, how are they doing it with their mind and their technology and their understanding?
Yeah. And you might find some timeless, age-old problems, right? That things are still being done today in your brand new organization as you did them 20, 30 other years ago. Yeah.
If procurement needs a tool, the CTO, CTO, they have to request the budget, then request integration, then map it out against all other companies. It's a year, 2 years in the making easily. Best case scenario. You ask these kids to put a Band-Aid, to put a patch, that will work for the next 3-5 years. And will do exactly what's supposed to. It may not be as sophisticated as the dreamiest AI application, but it will do the job. That also exists today. So we should not pretend that because we talk AI, that everything else disappears. No, majority of procurement organizations, unless they're part of very sophisticated and technology leaders, their processes and their automated solution is a little bit under.
Absolutely. And I was going to suggest, Natasha, and to your point around talking to your CTO and CIO, work with those teams as well, your internal tech teams, because as the technology evolves, absolutely you're going to get new standards and policies that are rolled out across the business. And what I suspect, Natasha, back to your point around where do you use point solutions, how do you join the whole tech stack, that is going to be a really important question in a year or two, right? Once the proliferation of all these tools, okay, how do we make this one process with one interface, right? When I have 6, 7 tools running underneath. So I think super valuable. Yeah. I did want to just pivot just maybe briefly, Conrad, just on the, I think you said one of the trends that you saw 2025 is procurement becoming the sort of supplier risk manager, I feel like, and that this is here to stay. Walk us through kind of your thinking there. Is it all the more important in 2025 as it was in 2024?
Well, I would say yes, for sure. I think the trend's going to continue. And I come from a framework of indirect procurement versus supply chain procurement. And, I caveat this all the time. I think from we talked about, I think in one of our early episodes, from the origin of the pyramids, I think procurement has been a thing, particularly in, do I have supplies? Do I have labor? Do I have these things in more of a direct way? But even on the direct material side, even on the supply chain side, I told you AI is one of my favorite, Perplexity is my new best friend, right? I went out to Perplexity and I said, show me all the major regulatory requirements that we need to comply with. This is a list of, I can't even read them to you right now. It's like 50 things. Privacy, data protection, labor and human rights, environmental sustainability, safety and quality, trade and customs, anti-corruption and ethics, financial and reporting, industry-specific stuff, cybersecurity, supply chain due diligence, and there's 10 bullets under each one of these, right? And these are laws that governments are putting together. So, I think 15 years ago when this started happening with the GDPR is coming, everybody be careful. I think it was a hot potato that procurement leaders were generally going, oh, well, it's taken too long because it's with IT or it's with illegal or that's not okay anymore. And I think most of us have probably realized that if we turn this risk problem over to the professional risk, the risk professionals, we're going to be here forever. You'll never get procurement done if you just let the risk teams do everything that they want to do and you don't become the voice of the customer. And even look for the efficiencies and the redundancies and everything else that you would from operationally across all these teams. So I just don't think the procurement leaders it's kind of by de facto coming to us because they're don't bring in a supplier until you do this, that, and the other. We have to do it. We're the gatekeeper. But we don't need to be just the gatekeeper. We can be the designer. We can make sure these are really good, well-designed and running processes.
Do you agree, Natasha? Do you see risk also show up on the radar for you often?
How about I'll share my thoughts in the next episode?
I was thinking we should probably have just an episode just on risk, just to really deep dive on those ones. So let's do that.
Let's do that.
We'll slate it for 2025, one of the earlier releases. Yeah. Okay, I think we can leave it there. Conrad, Natasha, thank you so much for your time. I think, it's been a great episode where we identified a number of our big themes for 2025. I'm just going to run through them. We have getting the basics right. So dealing with all the uncertainty, but also still trying to deliver the basics. We have the change from savings to value. The procurement is going to be tasked with doing more than just driving cost savings, and that's going to be more embedded going forward. For example, to Conrad's point around managing risks, that's a new role that the procurement will have to take forward. We talked about maturing technology landscape and how technology will still be a buzzword going into the year ahead, especially now with AI and the advent of AI tools and how those fit into your overall technology stack. And we also touched on procurement skills in the market for talent and procurement, and just making sure that as a procurement professional, you stay ahead and equipped for that market. So would you agree?
Stuff.
Would you say those are broadly our predictions? All right.
Yeah, great summary.
Those are our 4 things. So thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year.